Oi, oi, it's your boy, Jack Slack, Fights Gone By podcast, coming at you on Monday, the 14th of December. Christmas is well on the way. And, we got a little bit of a bittersweet one today, because while there were lots of excellent fights over the weekend, and absolute slobber knocker king by Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno in the main event, and while Charles Oliveira did look spectacular, there was a sadder note because Ilima Lay McFarlane lost her title. And I think we all feel that. No, I had no idea. I didn't even notice. I found out that there was a Bellator event over the weekend just now, just before coming on air, while pulling up the Tapology page for the UFC card so that I could remember what I'm talking about. Yeah, banging. Absolutely banging. UFC 256, well worth hyping. Especially because I spent 2 Filthy Casuals guides on this one. I did a Gavin Tucker one a couple of weeks ago, and I did a Charles Oliveira one, and it actually went double good, if we were speaking in 1984 language. No, but I didn't curse either of them. Both of them won. There genuinely is a sad note because Tony Ferguson lost emphatically, did not look good in that loss, looked slow, shambling, and lost on the bottom. And you know, there is a discussion to be had about age and damage and things like that. But I think the whole thing is that I very much want to say these things don't affect people equally, because Charles Oliveira has taken some of the nastiest beatings, or certainly some of the nastiest stoppages in the lightweight and featherweight divisions. You know, he has been people's whipping boy at times. The whole thing was that people didn't believe he could be a top lightweight because every time he met a Donald Cerrone or a Cub Swanson or a Paul Felder or whoever, he fell short. But timing makes everything. You know, these people are training every day, all day, and at some point it starts to show its effect, and at some point it starts to take it out of people, and it's just a weird... You don't really know when it's going to happen for whom the bell tolls. Yeah, it's weird because, like, I'm seeing a lot of stuff about Tony Ferguson coming out, you know, people being like, well, he's probably the best fighter to never be considered the undisputed champion of the world, blah, blah, blah. Imagine what Khabib would have done to him, blah, blah, blah. And I think it's unfortunate because him and Khabib have been matched up about 5 times now, and that's been over about 4 or 5 years. So it probably would have looked very different if it happened last night or, you know, Saturday night from if it happened the first time they were booked or the second time. And I think that's the whole thing. Timing really is everything, because even if you take their matchup off the table, the reason that Khabib was made the undisputed champion and Tony was only ever made the interim champion was completely random, basically. You know, Conor took the belt and fucked off with one fight in the can at lightweight, and then they booked Khabib and Tony, and one of the times it fell through and Tony was left over, and they made it an interim title. And then one of the times it fell through and Khabib was left over, and they decided to make it the undisputed title. And literally it was just the timing that made the difference. So that's kind of unfortunate. I think he'll probably go on most people's lists. You know, it come 5-10 years' time when they're talking about like the best fighters ever and, you know, underappreciated fighters and things like that. Tony Ferguson, probably a shoo-in. Absolutely remarkable fighter. And still bummed out we didn't get that Tony versus Khabib, because it was such a fascinating matchup, and just all the cancellations only made you want it more. You know? But let's talk about my fave fight. Well, no, the fight that I was so hyped for last week. You know, if you're bored of this, skip ahead. But Tony Ferguson versus Charles Oliveira, I thought Oliveira looked great. Thought he did what he did so well. You know, be aggressive, get Tony down. Just beautiful top work in this one. If you saw... We're going to go inside baseball here, but there was some passing in this one that was absolutely gorgeous. He got pushed back to like butterfly half. And butterfly half is when you've got one leg, if you're the bottom man, one leg in between their legs, hooking a leg, and then a butterfly hook normally on the same leg. What you'll notice in the 2 times that Oliveira passes from guard to mount in that fight, one of them the camera sort of cuts off, which is in the 3rd round. But in the 1st round, when he passes into mount the very first time, what he does is he doesn't let Tony have the butterfly hook and then hook around the back of the same leg. He uses the leg that Tony doesn't have trapped to hook to grapevine like he's in mount, underneath the leg that should be holding the half guard for Tony. And that was BJ Penn's big innovation, you know, one of his big innovations. He did a lot. In fact, there was a lot of BJ Penn in this fight, to be honest. But that grapevining on the half guard hook when in butterfly half guard And BJ Penn would force people into butterfly half guard. Like, he'd shove their half guard leg by the foot into his crotch, basically, because dudes didn't play a lot of butterfly half guard back then. But if you go back and watch that passing sequence, Ferguson's half guard leg, we'll divide them into half guard leg and butterfly leg. His half guard leg can't hook the half guard because Oliveira's got it grapevine with his other leg and he's holding it away. And that was what BJ Penn used to do, and he'd get the underhook on the same side as he was using the grapevine on the half guarding leg, and he'd push down on the knee on the butterfly leg and step into mount. And Oliveira didn't do that. He actually got the crossface, which is wrapping around the head with the arm and pushing your shoulder in, instead of the underhook on that side. And he used his leg that was being butterfly guarded. He just hooked it over the top, windshield wiped it, and went straight into side control and then mounted. It was absolutely gorgeous, and he did it twice, both the first and the third round. Paul Schreiner's done a lot of stuff on that. He's got a few instructionals there. He's got a couple with Jiu-Jitsu and a couple with BJJ Fanatics, which I haven't watched yet, but I'm going to get to because they've given me Supermarket Sweep and I'm having the time of my life. But yeah, it's just some absolutely gorgeous precision passing, I suppose. And that was the first sort of hint of BJ Penn. The second one was all the stacking he was doing. And this was a great card for stack passing. You remember when Barbosa fought Kevin Lee? Kevin Lee underpassed him, which is where you go, you know, arms under the legs, and you pull them up and stack their hips over their head. If you've not seen it, I mean, watch that fight, but it's a very old school guard pass. And you don't see a lot of people doing it in anything, to be honest, anymore. Andre Galvao just rocked up to the Euros one year and had brought it back and was like, yeah, I've just been working on this. Underpassed everyone. But it's still pretty rare to see, because if you start underpassing people in the gi, they kick their way back to spider guard. If you're underpassing people in the in no gi, they can slip their knees free. You know, they can slip their ass down you because of the sweat, and you're trying to pinch their legs against your shoulders. And also, you know, the elbows are an issue in MMA. You just don't see it much. Hioki used to do it a fair amount, actually. But there's sort of like two different ways of stacking. There's the underpass, which is where you get you get down on your knees and you wrap their legs underneath and pull them up onto your shoulders and start driving into them. And then there's the I think it was Gordon Ryan called it the double ankle stack, but where you just basically push their ankles. You take grips on their ankles and push them overhead. And Charles Oliveira was doing that all night to Ferguson, just stacking him up. If you saw, like, when the up kick happened, the illegal up kick, his hips were over his head. And the up kick didn't seem to have a lot on it, because that's the point of that position. That's something that BJ Penn used to advocate for a lot. And I think I saw him do it in a couple of his fights, but it was in his book, famously. Get in, push their ankles up, and get their hips over their head. Because if you can get a guy's taint pointing at the ceiling, unless you lean out over him, like lean your head out over him, it's very hard for him to up kick effectively, because he's got to kick up and back into you. But yes, that fight, there was an underpass. Jacare underpassed Kevin Holland, and then got elbowed in the head and moved back. And then Devison Figueiredo, out of nowhere, underpassed Moreno in round 4 or round 5. So it's coming back. I mean, one of the big bonuses of the underpass generally is that it's quite hard to finish against guys, but you can end up in the front headlock. You know, they roll backwards while you're trying to underpass them, and you're on the front headlock. But no, didn't get a lot of front headlock play in this one. The closest we got was Tony spinning out under the fence or along the fence and trying to hook up a dart. Bit of a last ditch effort. And he was trying to do those sort of like buggy chokes or variations on, there's a guy from 10th Planet who does a different sort of one. But we talked about them last week with Cade Ruotolo doing one at a very high level over PJ Barch, whatever it is, the Butter Panther. And that's where you're from the bottom of side control and you use your arm over their back to grip inside your leg or outside your leg and close the space in your lat and pinch their head and shoulder together and create an arm triangle choke while they're on top of you. And it can work. It can also serve to like stop the action so that the ref goes, come on, and then stands you up. And it can also serve to like make them posture up, because there's no reason to posture up from side control normally, because it would give the guy space to escape. If you start putting them in the threat of a choke and it starts to become serious for them, they try and get their chest off yours and you'll be able to hopefully shrimp back to some form of guard. But Tony really wasn't able to do much. He did invert at one point and get like an upside down guard, like he had against Barboza. But yeah, Oliveira was all over him. Firstly, how big is Oliveira looking nowadays? I remember him being, all that footage I used in the Filthy Casuals guide of him way back in the day when he's like 21. He is a skinny kid. But that's growing up. From Muhammad Ali to Michael Jordan, any of these guys who stick around for a while, they're these skinny ass kids to begin with, and then they just pack on about 10 pounds of muscle to look after themselves, to deal with injuries, and just growing into their bodies, and they look completely different. And Oliveira looked absolutely huge. You look at him going, this guy thought he could have a run at featherweight. and obviously he missed weight at featherweight a couple of times in the course of that. And really, when he was at featherweight, I said this in the Filthy Casuals guide, but he really went all out. Like he decided to just run at people, stick on them, and try and take them down. And while he could do that to almost everyone, if they survived, he tended to get really tired and sloppy. So like back to back, Anthony Pettis and Ricardo Lamas, he's all over them, taking them down, scrambling all over them. They're surviving, and then he comes up on a sloppy double leg with his head down, and they just guillotine him. But yeah, he looks, he's aggressive all the time, but he looks patient in his aggression, almost. Like against Lee, he's going forward, he's throwing the flying kicks, but he's willing to take a step back. He's willing to duck inside and create a clinch. He's not just desperately running after the dude. I still think there's a lot of issues with Charles Oliveira. The head movement's a big problem. He's never had any, really. Sort of like a one-size-fits-all counter left hook to collar tie. And in this one, he dominated Tony in the first round. He'd probably hurt his arm by basically hyperextending it. You notice Tony wasn't really throwing any punches with his left hand in the opening of the second round. Actually, all through the second round. And then third round, he throws a couple. But he had an advantage, and he was still sort of taking a step back. And while Tony wasn't able to put it together, that is exactly how Tony has gotten back into fights in the past, and that's exactly how Charles Oliveira has lost fights in the past. I think he is one of those guys who really benefits. We say about like counterfighters, he's half the man on offense that he is on defense, or on the counter rather. But Oliveira is one of those guys who's just so much better on offense. And he reminds me a lot of what Marcelo Garcia says. Because, jiu-jitsu is always like portrayed as the defensive art, blah, blah, blah. And Marcelo Garcia, who has had almost unparalleled success as a smaller man, going up 3 weight classes, winning the absolute at Abu Dhabi, just excelling at all weights despite being 60-something kilos. But whenever he's asked about it, he's like, yeah, you got to attack and you got to stay on the attack, because when I'm attacking, he's not attacking. You go, well, that doesn't really gel with what I thought I knew about jiu-jitsu. But it is a smart way to look at things. It's certainly a smart way to look at things as a beginner. There's an argument for that sort of Ribeiro style of approach of learn to survive, then learn to escape, and then start worrying about attacking. But you'll have a lot more fun if you learn to attack and you start attacking early. And Charles Oliveira's jiu-jitsu and striking and wrestling are all like that. Just get on the offense, and then you don't have to worry. And to be honest, that's Khabib's game. Khabib, if you watch him against Justin Gaethje, he makes a lot of errors. He's either going, fucking hell, this guy's going to eat a big counter at some point, but he rushes Gaethje so much that Gaethje's winging these left hooks, just trying to get breathing room. And that's an extreme example of Khabib, because he had that broken toe coming in and had mumps or whatever. It was an uncharacteristically run at them sort of performance from him. But yes, he has excelled too because of his aggression. Oh, we didn't even touch on how dope the armbar was. He's in mount. Tony's clinching to his belly. He makes a bit of space. He elbows, and the moment that he elbows, his weight comes off his legs. He's moving into the S mount, and he's swinging himself around for the armbar. Absolutely seamless. And Daniel Cormier, there's a lot of criticism of the commentary on this one, because the main event was just them shouting "oh" over and over again. But I thought Daniel Cormier had a really good point in this one. Well, he said when he was talking about guys coming up in the UFC, and he mentioned Charles Oliveira and he mentioned Holloway also. And you go back, and Holloway lost to Dennis Bermudez, and people who you just would never ever imagine in the same league as Holloway now. It's because these guys are coming in at 20 years old, which is absurdly young, but you're seeing them lose, and they could be out on the regional scene in Bellator, winning the Bellator regional title, and picking up wins there and being undefeated. And yeah, they come to the UFC and then they might do well, they might do badly, who knows. But I think it's up in the air what prepares fighters better, and I don't know if it's the same for everyone. I think some guys will do better being thrown in at the deep end, and some guys need to be nurtured. But I do think that the way that it happens in the UFC with guys coming in young biases you against them being able to get better. You know, I saw so many people being like, I'm still not sold on Oliveira because he lost to X, Y, and Z. And you go, if you can't see the difference, not only in how he's fighting, but in the his physical frame, can you not see that this is a different dude to the one who was running backwards away from Donald Cerrone? But what a wonderful fucking performance. I might even write something about it because I need to make a little, I need to make some diagrams to talk about that passing because it was so lush. But that's 20 minutes spent on that fight. So let's talk about the rest of this fucking card. I mean, the main event was really good. Deiveson Figueiredo has, we all accept that he's an incredibly fun fighter and very entertaining. And there are still people being like, I can't imagine this guy losing. But he's also very obviously flawed, and he's had one of the weirdest title runs already. Had to win the belt twice because he missed weight on the first attempt, which I don't think has ever happened. I don't think anyone's ever won the title having missed weight. Oh, did Yoel Romero miss it against Rockhold? Was that an interim title? Fuck, I can't remember. But it's very, very unusual. It's like Travis Lutter, and that's about it otherwise. But then Travis Lutter lost, so it wasn't a problem. So Figueiredo had to win the belt twice against the same guy, and then he managed to defend his belt in this one in a draw, draws in UFC title fights. There was one between Edgar and Maynard, I remember that one. But that's about it. I mean, hit me up if you can remember other ones. But it's always very strange because you see the headline and people choose to run the headline like Deiveson Figueiredo defends title in draw. And you're going, what? And you can see it in the fighters, it's an outcome they're almost completely unprepared for. So when the results are read out, you're sort of like, wait, do I keep the belt or am I still the champion? How does this go down on the stats? Are my title defenses now considered a streak, or do I have two separate sets of title defenses? It really does complicate things because it happens so rarely. Mind you, if they were still trying to sell Demetrius Johnson, this happened to him, they'd be like, the only man to defend the belt in a draw. When they were making up not making up stats, but drawing attention to latest submission in a fight. You're like, well, that just means that he couldn't submit the guy until the last second. No one's aiming for that record. But yes, this fight was really good. Brandon Moreno, insanely tough because Figueiredo came out and he looked very sharp, even though he's winging one shot at a time. Very bad on the combination, but very good at timing his shots and countering. He countered over the jab 3 times in a row. He's throwing left hooks to the body, throwing good front kicks to the body, and then at one point kicks him in the dick, and it looked nasty. Moreno was retching. But Moreno, otherworldly toughness. He's fighting a guy who's considerably bigger than him because Moreno was on weight the day before. Figueiredo is famous for making these huge weight cuts. I mean, like I said, he missed weight in the biggest fight of his career. That's how fine he has cut it at certain points. But Moreno has taken his best shots and coming back, and when he was really doing well, he was coming back in combinations. A big right hand would bounce off his head or shoulders, and he'd come back with a left hook to the body and a right straight. And, I don't want to do the whole Mexican boxing thing, but he looked like some of the better Mexican boxers that you will recall, like Juan Manuel Marquez, great because he countered in combinations. He was never just one at a time. It was always he came back and he got more. And it often comes off as tenacity, which is why people are like, oh, Mexican fighting spirit, blah, blah, blah. But it's just smart. If you get a hit and you're there for the counter, try and take as much as you can on the way back. But his jab looked sharp too. I was very surprised how seldom Figueiredo went to the uppercut because Moreno was leaning well forward of his hips for most of the fight. He'd circle the cage, he'd get sort of towards the cage and he'd go, okay, now I have to plant my feet and fight. And then he'd lean forward at the waist and jab. And it was kind of a strange performance because I thought Moreno, when he actually moved and he had Figueiredo following him, I thought he was landing some good blows, like he could walk him onto jabs and things. But, I mean, very clearly he was a little bit on edge because of Figueiredo's power and counterability. No, that would be if you can be countered, but counters, because he was sort of you could see him sort of running from Figueiredo and then having to park himself up near the cage and go, right, I'm standing and fighting here. And then he'd do the same, he'd circle out after a combination or whatever, and he'd do the same over the other side of the cage. I'm very intrigued by the rematch of this one. Talk about all the grappling first. Great grappling in this one throughout. Moreno's taking him down. Figueiredo's doing a great job of getting up. Lots and lots of framing off the face, like prime Vanderlei Silva. If in doubt, put your hand over their face and just push it away. Some fingers in the eyes and a dick kick. Unfortunate because not intentional probably, but illegal damage. And it does add up, especially over the course of a 25-minute war. So good work by Herzog to take the point on that dick kick. I think he's absolutely within his rights there, because it's like if you load up an uppercut from behind you and the guy moves in and you hit him in the balls and you rupture his testy, that's still your fault. That's not, even if your intention was to punch him in the head, you still ended up punching him in the dick. I think there's this thing where it's like, it wasn't intentional, and you can, plausible deniability, you can give anyone the benefit of the doubt. I mean, they give John Jones the benefit of the doubt every time with fingers in the eyes, even though there's hundreds and hundreds of clips of him sticking his fingers in people's eyes. I think we need more people like Herzog who just look at not the intention of the foul, not whether it's the third time you've done it, but the severity of the foul. If it's going to change the fight, regardless, Moreno said he wants to fight on. Good for him, but he has been adversely affected by your illegal strike. And I think that's what you want to see more of. So good job, Jason Herzog. Got hit with a tweet storm afterwards and replied to one person being like, be honest, how much did you lose? Which was fantastic. But yes, reminding us why he's the official referee of the Fights Gone By podcast. But yes, talking about like a rematch of this one, because obviously they're going to have to run it back. And it helps that it was a really good fight, because this is the sort of thing, if you remember how the UFC lightweight division ended, it was on a draw in a title fight. They were like, this will decide the champion. Fuck it. And they just shut the whole thing down. I'm so glad this was a good fight, because it gives them no real excuse to shut the division down, and they have to move ahead and they're going to rebook the match. But I'd be very interested in the rematch, because you're going to see Moreno could benefit enormously from having recognized that he can take Figueiredo shots. And like his best work, he clipped off a 3-punch combination and hit Figueiredo with all of them, and then Figueiredo went entirely on the defense. And that's what you need to be doing, landing combinations, not coming back with one at a time, which I did say he was very good at generally, but he was still doing one at a time for a lot of it. But, that's the danger. If you're dealing with a big counterpuncher, he throws his right hand, you get stuck in with a 3-punch combination. You're giving him time to reload and throw that right hand again, even if he's not in position to combination punch. So you got the interesting, does Brandon Moreno come in overconfident because he was fine with fourth round and fifth round Figgy, and he forgets how scary first round Figgy is? Or does he come in with more confidence to just stay in the pocket and counter in combination and overwhelm Figueiredo? And shout out to Figueiredo for all the bodywork too, because Moreno came on storming in the fourth round, and then by the fifth round he was tired, and Figueiredo had been digging into his body all match with left hooks and right front kicks, and switching to southpaw and throwing left kicks too. So yeah, good fight. But I don't think there was any doubt you'd get that, to be honest. Everyone who knew these two was like, yeah, that's going to be a pretty good fight. The most Bellator knockout in UFC history between Kevin Holland and Ronaldo Souza. Now, I've said this several times, but I was working on something on Kevin Holland, and I was actually going to talk about the talking, because this is something that Eddie Bravo brought up. Like, he used to trash talk with people back in the day, but he was talking about on the Rogan, where they talk about the Hoyler rematch, because Hoyler saw that as like a blood feud, and Eddie Bravo's just joking around with him while they're grappling. And obviously Eddie's taking it seriously, because after the match he had an adrenaline dump and vomited everywhere, and he trained seriously for the first time in years to do it. But Eddie said in that podcast that he'd much rather fight someone who was laughing than someone who was angry at him. And I've been saying, I was thinking that before this fight about Kevin Holland, I was watching him against Thiago Santos, where Santos is on top of him, elbowing him. And he's like, damn, man, this sucks. And Thiago Santos starts laughing and stops hitting him. And you're like, oh, onto something here. And the same thing happened here with Jacare. Jacare is in his guard, eating elbows. He hits Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland's like, oh, good one, man. And Jacare smiles, and Kevin Holland just starts hitting him again. It's weird. I mean, I'm not going to pretend it's like bad sportsmanship or anything, but it does play with your mentality. Think about all the ghastly politicians you can think of, and then like one feel-good story comes out about them. Or great example, David Cameron, absolute cunt, but left his child in a pub and drove off by accident because he's got 3 kids. Or oh shit, one of his kids died. I'm going to sound awful now, but he left one of his kids in the pub by accident, and his favorability rating jumped like the most it ever did based on that. People were like, that's quite funny and also relatable. And I think that sort of plays in here. Like, if you can make someone laugh in a fight, they lose a little bit of that focus and that killer instinct. Everyone's always talking about killer instinct, but it takes some doing for a lot of these guys to go out there and want to just hurt someone. If you can break that just for a second, you can get yourself a minor advantage in the moment. But this knockout was absolutely bizarre. I thought Holland was doing a really good job because Jacare, strong wrestler in the first round, gets worse and worse as the fight goes on. We talked about this before, but like he really does benefit from just diving after people's legs. But Holland was doing a great job of staying up. And then when he gets taken down, he's elbowing Jacare with nasty, nasty elbows to the head. Jacare does a beautiful stack pass and basically gives it up because his head's sore, it looked like. And then this finish, like Kevin Holland pushes him away, sits up and twats him with a swinging right hand. And it reminds me of that one that Chael Sonnen often talks about, Damian Maia hitting him with a back fist from his back and him just not being ready for it. And he always says that it's like the hardest or the most he's ever been hurt by a punch. And, it's one of the big truisms of fighting is it's the one that you don't see coming. But very rare to see someone knocked out like this. And really bad because he folded backwards over his own knees. And you're like, oh, that looks really uncomfortable. So what else was on this card? I mean, it was just a great card from top to bottom. Cyril Gane came back, beat up Junior Dos Santos. Looked very tentative for the most part, I thought. Obviously, Junior Dos Santos, yes, well past his best. I think he's on like a 4-fight losing streak now, but still very, very dangerous hands. And when you say like fast hands, not like he's going to clip off a 4-punch combination, but he's still very good at timing people. And you got the sense that Gane really respected that. But, something that I've always talked about is how Gane, when he's swinging to try and hurt people, he looks like shit. And then when he's fighting just like he's trying to outpoint people, he actually does damage. And you saw that here, he just jabbed him and turned his head around and stunned him, moved in, hit him with an elbow. There was some debate over whether it was behind the head and whatnot. I think it was one of those ones that's sort of borderline. But it did remind me of Uriah Faber just smashing his elbow through the back of Brian Bowles' neck and the referee doing nothing about it. I mean, it wasn't the best performance out of Gane. He did what was expected, but the knockout was a bit flaccid, I suppose. People wanted to see him just start Junior Dos Santos very, very quickly. But now he's 7-0, he's going to be moving on up. Just wondering who they're going to put him in against next. Like, do you put him in against someone like Curtis Blades or Volkov or someone? I mean, him versus Volkov could be a fun fight, but could also be a weird point-sparring kickboxing match. What else was good? Cub Swanson versus Daniel Pineda was a very strange fight because Daniel Pineda came out knowing exactly what he needed to do, looking twice the size of Swanson and doing it, and then basically threw the fight away. It was very strange. And in fairness, he was attacking the lead leg, which was, that's part of his game anyway. You're not expected to drop that just because Cub Swanson's coming back from a knee injury due to knee reap by Jake Shields, which feels like it was forever ago. But Pineda actually got a little bit too into it and got caught on one leg, and that's how he first got rocked. And then I think he got knocked out coming out of a clinch or coming out of like close range with like an uppercut and I can't remember what the finish was, but I just remember thinking, damn, Pineda, you sort of threw that away. Because Cub had to switch stances at several points back to southpaw to hide his left leg. He was like at the start of the second round, he hurts him by going southpaw, leaping in with like a weird jumping right straight, and then a second one immediately afterwards. It was like watching a very young Nazim Hamed throwing himself all over the ring. I had some people be like, is Cub Swanson one of the best boxers in MMA? And I think he's one of the most interesting, but I think he's very, very much on the downhill now. And I think this fight was more a testament to his guts and savvy, and Daniel Pineda sort of fighting like a muppet. But yeah, I mean, I'll always watch Cub. I stand for Cub. Fiziev versus Moicano. I mean, we were talking about this a few weeks ago, like what a banging matchup that is. And I was surprised. I thought Moicano's jab worked quite well at several points in this one. He got off some good counter right hands. But Fiziev, Last time it was the body kick. This time it was still the switch kick to the body, but also just the combinations. So creative. I actually took notes on this one and was like, damn, what cool combinations. But there was one where he threw a 1-2 and Moicano came back at him. And I was like, oh, damn, Moicano's on the trigger tonight. And then Fiziev, on the way back, threw up a left high kick and then another left high kick, 2 in a row. And I went, fucking hell, like a baited trap. He punched to get Moicano coming back, and then he closed the door with 2 high kicks off the same leg, which was very cool. There was another one where he went left kick, left inside low kick, right straight, left high kick. Absolutely gorgeous. Combinations built around that very unusual left round kick, the switch kick, or just generally out of his stance. Very few people that dexterous and powerful with their lead leg, especially in combination. And then the finish was a left hook to the body, right straight, left hook. Beautiful stuff. Thought the referee jumped on it a little bit quick. I mean, there was like, Moicano's falling over when he got up again, but you've seen so many dudes roll to guard. And if they'd been made to stand up in that instant, they'd have been falling over. I just would have liked to go a couple more punches, but I suppose Moicano's probably going to be grateful in a couple of years when he looks back that they didn't let him take a few more punches. But yeah, man, Fiziev looked sharp as hell in this one. Oh, and he was using the right low kick as well, which was something we talked about in the pre-fight, because Moicano likes to stretch his stance out and work the jab. Yeah, it was interesting, because Moicano was also throwing that really nice right straight to the body, which was working well, because Fiziev fights quite square. So yeah, I mean, Fiziev gets the knockout, but I thought it was an interesting matchup playing out before Moicano got knocked out. Interesting that Moicano didn't really go to any of the grappling much. I know Fiziev's very good in the clinch, but you would have expected him to pick up a single or something just to make Fiziev work. And then Gavin Tucker, who we did a Filthy Casuals guide on, fought Billy Quarantillo. Billy Quarantillo's whole thing has been like pushing the pace, out-cardioing people. Was it Spike Carlisle he beat by out-cardioing? But yeah, just really going for it. And Gavin Tucker did the very smart thing, because firstly, he has struggled with longer, taller guys, and he's struggled with people who stay on him because he likes to clip off a couple of punches and then circle off. And he immediately ducked into a clinch once he realised what Quarantillo was trying to do, took the underhooks, turned him onto the fence, worked a little bit from there, grappled a bit, and then broke off. And suddenly, Gavin Tucker's floating around the cage again without much pressure. And then any time that Billy Quarantillo goes like, oh, fuck, I better get the pressure going again, Tucker would clinch him up, take him down, do whatever, and then break off, and then start kicking, circling, darting down the outside of the lead leg. And there was a beautiful one in the second round where we talked, the Filthy Casuals guide was specifically on that shift from southpaw to orthodox to line up the right uppercut. He shifted from southpaw to orthodox, and he threw a poker straight right hand down the center that smacked Quarantillo. You also saw him do that thing that he does a lot, where he picks up his rear leg as if to kick, and then shuffles forward a little bit, putting it down, and then kicks again. So it's like a little double pump, and he does it with the high kick, and it works really well. I'm going to have to steal that. But yeah, Tucker just looked like the man here. And then what else? Oh, Chase Hooper opened the night, and I was disappointed because I thought it was going to be Chase Sherman, and no, it wasn't, which is why people might have been confused when I was like, oh, heavyweights to open the card last week. No, it was Chase Hooper. I mean, every time they're like, this guy's working so hard on his striking, but it's not showing through. It's just a mess. Really, I think with guys like that, certainly Zane Simon pointed out that there is a lot to forget. If he's been training as long as, he's been training MMA forever. He's not been training just grappling forever. He's been training since he was a kid, so he's got a lot of bad ingrained habits. But I think with people like that, you just need to find one or two things that they can hurt people with on the feet, because that's more important than anything. If you can teach someone to throw a good right hand and hurt people, he's got more confidence on the feet, and he's got that chance of covering up and throwing back. He becomes a threat. Whereas at the moment, his striking is like, please pay attention to my striking because I'm going to dive on your legs. But no part of it is in any way threatening. Did a couple of cool Imanari rolls, was losing pretty badly through the first 2 rounds. And then the Imanari roll in the third, he gets the leg, but he's not got the knee line. And the camera angle changed, and he's hammer fisting this guy, and the guy's ducking, what's his name, Barrett, he's ducking his forehead in and taking him and be like, nah, it's not doing anything, mate. And you're looking at it going like, okay, cool, that isn't really working. And then they switch the camera back, and he's got his knee. He's got the knee line. Like, I didn't see when he pulled that back, so he must have pulled it back while he was doing the hammer fist, which was brilliant because everyone was like, those hammer fists aren't doing anything, mate. And then he finished the heel hook, which was incredible. So, yeah, I mean, he's sort of succeeding in spite of himself. He really probably needs to lose a couple, go out of the UFC, fight some lesser competition, build up, the rest of his skills, something he can do on the feet to set up some kind of takedown to bring him into the grappling that works so well. But he's got the Ben Askren meme going on, and people love that. So, he's around for as long as he's around. What else happened over the weekend? I mean, there was one UFC event. I only really watched Jonathan Haggerty's fight from that. I tell you, that was quite cool because, he's a guy who I don't give much credit for his hands. They've not been great. And what he really does well is lead leg kicking. But he got this guy, Taiki Naito, on checking and kicking back with his lead leg. And as soon as they're in this lead leg battle, Haggerty picks up his lead leg, steps in and hits him with the right hand, knocks him down. Lovely stuff. Good to see him back. And there was a Bellator card, which I haven't watched yet, but I did see that Lyndon Vassell beat someone, so I'll go watch that because he's always funnish. So all in all, not a bad card. I mean, the big question coming out of this are what happens with the lightweight division now? People are talking about Chandler like he's definitely fighting Justin Gaethje. I didn't see that news. I still don't know who he's fighting. But you got McGregor versus Pourier happening in January, so that'll be exciting. You'll have a winner of that. I think, if McGregor wins that one, I'd say definitely Charles Oliveira is probably the fight he wants, because Charles Oliveira's got some openings on the feet that he could exploit. And I think that if he could put Oliveira on the back foot, you'd have Oliveira awkwardly coming off the fence in exactly the way that McGregor likes. Oliveira versus Poirier, though, that could be a fun-ass fight. I think I like Poirier against Chandler more than I like McGregor against Chandler. But Chandler, he's kind of like a bigger Chad Mendes, or more accurately, a smaller Dan Henderson in a better division. He's got the good right straight and double leg, and then he'll just sort of lay on you on the fence. He does a lot of that in fights where he sort of gets tired. So yeah, intrigued to see how his UFC debut goes. But yes, this one breaks Oliveira through. There are guys like him, Drew Dober, Benil Dariush, Diego Ferreira, Islam Makhachev, all those guys I would give a good chance against any of these top lightweights on any night. But that's the thing about the lightweight division. It's timing, it's getting the wins together. I would pay to see almost any of these top lightweights, like top 15, top 20, against Khabib, and I would have, months ago, because it's the lightweight division. You literally cannot count anyone out, especially with the incredibly diverse skill sets going on there now. It's not like everyone has... The worry was that everyone would round out and become the same fighter, and it really hasn't happened. You've got some very strange collections of skills. But anyway, that'll do us for today. I'll be back probably later in the week. We're going to talk about some more interesting... Well, not more interesting, but we're going to talk about some outside of the UFC stuff, because I think we've got a little break now between UFC events. We've got a big Rising card coming up. We've got Koji versus Kai Asakura rematch. Koji's return after destroying his knee. We've got some One and some Bellator stuff going on, but also it'll be fun to talk about some history, some concept stuff, a big review of various instructionals I'm having an absolutely great time with. I think it's Zach Esposito. He's got an amazing instructional on the single leg, which is incredibly important to me as a British person who learned to wrestle through MMA gyms and BJJ gyms, so can do a single leg, but not to a good standard. And, especially as the single leg is also so much of playing the guard, both in the gi and no gi. But yes, lots to talk about in the coming few weeks. We're going to have lots of interesting stuff coming for the Patreon boys too. Gives me a chance to write about cool shit. Probably going to write something about Kyoji. The Kai Asakura is good, so I'm sort of up in the air. Do I write about Kyoji's style and the sort of point fighting to MMA connection generally, which I always like talking about, or do I talk about Kai Asakura versus Kyoji, the rematch? Yeah, you tell me. Anyway, if you want to get in on the extra stuff, support the podcast, be a boy, sign up to the Patreon. If you want to send an email to the podcast, fightsgonepodcast@gmail.com. And if you want to see what I'm writing at any time, fightprimer.com. I'm your boy, Jack Slack. The power of Charles Oliveira's platinum hair. Bless.